moment you start feeling abundant and worthy, you are generating wealth.
Sum up the law of attraction.
Get rich using the law of attraction.
Favorite law of attraction and manifesting hacks.
So it's just one payment of $399 or 3 installments of $149.
How to manifest your significant other.
Manifesting health for the people in our lives.
You want to manifest anything you want into your life. Be
ask for a video on how to manifest someone.
On the 17-second manifestation,
you expand your awareness.
How to manifest a text from a specific person.
You got to break through the logic. You cannot let logic control you. Logic is bad for us.
Multi-level marketing and the law of attraction go together like white on rice. Many people first heard about the law of attraction after watching a 2006 pseudoscientific documentary called The Secret, written and produced by a woman named Rhonda Byrne, which sold over $65 million in DVD sales alone.
Once you discover the secret, that you can immediately start creating the life you want, whether it's getting out of debt, whether it's finding a more fulfilling job, even falling in love.
So what's the big secret? In their words, it's the law of attraction, which is based on the belief that positive or negative thoughts bring positive or negative experiences into a person's life. Leave your scarcity mindset behind and align your thoughts and feelings with that of abundance. Many financially well-off people, from businessmen to celebrities to lifestyle gurus and even popular YouTubers, claim the law of attraction has worked for them. And if they're so successful, they can't be wrong, right?
I had friends that were telling me that the secret is real.
You're such a manifester, but you also, I think, you convey so well that anybody can be a manifester in their life.
So I started manifesting when I found out about this power of manifestation, the what's it called? The secret? Yeah, the secret. And so I would look in the mirror and I'd say my goals 10 times in the morning, 10 times at night. And in high school, my goal was, unknowingly, I would say, I will be more successful than anyone I know.
You recognize your vibrational frequency. You're drawing into yourself all the time, literally, the vibration that is most like what you're putting out.
Right.
You also mentioned as an example that a few years ago you told your brain you didn't want to get sick anymore.
My belief in the law of attraction is, Blake, believe in it.
You know, folks, I'll admit it, my life is going really, really well. Many of my dreams have come true. And one book that resonates with me all the time is this book right here. It's called The Secret. It is the most powerful book outside of the Bible that I have ever read in my life.
The truth is, The Secret targets vulnerable people who are struggling financially, having relationship problems, suffering from a disease, or those searching for answers. The law of attraction sounds nice, but underneath the peaceful mantras of positive thinking and the pretty people who promote it, the law of attraction has a dark side.
Most people look at their current state of affairs and they say, this is who I am. That's not who you are. That's who you were.
We have some secret teachers back to talk about.
Hey, what's the problem?
2 people not breathing.
You've got to grow in every single way.
Your money is nothing more than the amount of energy, paper energy, that you have in your pocket or purse.
Hey, what's the problem?
2 people not breathing. With no pulse. Yes.
Police are focusing their investigation on James Arthur Ray, the motivational speaker and self-help guru who ran the 5-day retreat. Over 60 people were in the sweat lodge for 2 hours as the culmination of Ray's spiritual warrior retreat. It was pitch black inside and extremely hot. When it was over, 2 people were dead.
Kirby's life ended while she was trying to improve it. That's when she found self-help guru James Arthur Ray.
And I can help you. I really can.
The motivational speaker had already built a multi-million-dollar business, launched by the popular movie The Secret. She reached one of the highest level workshops, a retreat, which cost her her life savings, $10,000.
Do find the defendant, James Arthur Ray, on the offense of negligent homicide as a result of the death of Kirby Brown as follows: guilty.
What if I just visualize checks coming in the mail? So I just visualize a bunch of checks coming in the mail. Within just 1 month, things started to change. And it is amazing. Today, I just get checks in the mail. I get a few bills, but I get more checks than bills.
In this exclusive investigation, Ben Fordham has found investors left high and dry and demanding justice.
A former student of Shermer's who spent $30,000 to learn about the stock market.
Part of the funds were supposed to be put into a trading fund, and David would then trade those funds on the futures stock market.
What happened to that fund?
Well, we don't know.
It's their money. They paid you the tuition fees.
It's not their money.
And you told them that you would take $5,000 out of each person's tuition and trade it on the market, and they would receive 50% of the profits. They never received any profits. Where's the money?
That money, and come back to the original question.
Where is the money? Please answer the question.
The money, and as someone asked me recently the same question.
Where is the money, David? Please answer the question. Where is the money?
Where is the money? You tell me.
November 23rd, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I truly believed in my heart, with my strong faith, that I was already healed. I saw myself as if cancer was never in my body. From the time I was diagnosed, which was November 23rd, to the time I was healed totally, was approximately 3 months. And that's without radiation and chemotherapy.
Why Herbalife? Because you get to be your own boss, earn extra money,
work from home, raise your own children.
you can name your own hours,
Make part-time or full-time money
paying the bills.
Share this video with 10 people.
that you care about, that you love, that you adore, that you admire. 20 people, 30 people,
Come on, what are you waiting for?
100 people. Share with everybody. They want what we have. We got it.
The law of attraction is new age dogma that multi-level marketing companies love to use as the perfect scapegoat when their distributors don't succeed. Let's say, for example, if I recruit you to an MLM company and you join my team, but 3 months later you complain you're not making any money, even though you've been working hard and attending all the team meetings, it would be so easy for me to regurgitate the law of attraction and say something like, well, maybe you're having negative thoughts and that's why you're not making any money. You should probably do more personal development and think positively. Then maybe your business will improve. But that leaves you in a precarious situation. You can't tell me you're not having any negative thoughts because you're a human being, and we have all kinds of thoughts, including intrusive thoughts. So this leaves you stuck in limbo without sales and questioning that maybe your mindset really is the reason you're not succeeding. This puts the blame on you and gets you off your upline's back. But in reality, as all multi-level marketing CEOs at the top of the pyramid know, success in MLM comes down to the size of your network. You have to have a large network of people in your community or a large following online. But if MLM companies can make you think you're the one at fault, then build you back up on emotional hype and convince you to stay another month and try harder, that is one more month you'll continue to order product, and the MLM company and your upline get paid. At its core, the law of attraction is nothing more than toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is the overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state that results in the denial, minimization, and invalidation of the authentic human emotional experience. After about 6 months of being in multi-level marketing, I fully believed in the law of attraction and swore by it. And after leaving MLM, I still believed in it for a while, until I was able to finally think critically about what the law of attraction really is and break it down. Although positive thinking, goal setting, focus, planning, visualization, a belief in yourself, and an attitude of gratitude are good things to strive for, at its core, the law of attraction and books and documentaries like The Secret are toxic positivity on steroids. The oversimplification that we are supposed to experience feelings that only make us feel good, such as love, joy, and happiness, can lead to extreme anxiety and delusional thinking. It doesn't matter how much we think about living in abundance through financial freedom if we're in debt and can't pay our bills. Wishing bad things away doesn't work, no matter how many times we grin and bear it. We're all adults here and know that after leaving an MLM company, we have to regretfully pick up the pieces of our lives and move on. But what happens when a child is raised on a steady diet of multi-level marketing and law of attraction gospel? What happens to children who regularly witness their parents under the influence of an MLM company? Can children shake off the MLM aftermath as successfully as their parents? Or does it linger?
As a kid, that was terrifying. Either things happened because I was a good person, or they didn't happen because the universe hated me.
Today, I'm interviewing a 34-year-old man named Isiah. His parents have been in multi-level marketing since he was born and were big believers in the law of attraction. It's the credence by which they raised their children, and it had a big effect on him that lingers to this day. Now, let's get into the interview and discover the hidden world of multi-level marketing and toxic positivity through the lens of a child and the lasting impact it has in adulthood. This is Isiah's story, as told to me.
Isiah, welcome to the channel. I am so
Hello.
excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be on.
And
A little nervous.
No, don't be nervous. And for the audience, if I sound a little bit different with my audio, or if it's not as good, I apologize. We had a lot of sound issues on my end with my headset. So I'm going without a microphone today. Just got to bear with it and roll with the punches. Okay, Isiah, I was so grateful that you emailed me because I have been dying to interview an adult child of MLM parents. Because in my world, in the MLM industry, when I was in it for almost 6 years, I saw a lot of neglect happening. So can you tell me what prompted you to reach out and want to share your story?
Really, what prompted me is the fact that everything's kind of hitting right now. I didn't realize exactly how I had grown up, the mind frame that I was raised with, or just how damaging it was until these last few years where it's just really all come to a head. And I'm 34 and I'm just now at a point where I'm realizing it's not sustainable.
Yes, you and I are the same age, and I had that same experience, I swear.
Yeah.
So you wrote in your email that you grew up with your parents. I know you said your mom was like a Mary Kay and Avon lady, and your father and mother both were big into the law of attraction and toxic positivity. Do you remember when that started?
It was always there. We grew up in a very chaotic household where there was almost this disconnect with reality. There was this idea that there were things that science and the real world said, and then there was reality. And that reality was what science just hadn't caught up to yet because they were just so busy caught up on the details. And it was this idea of the universe was entirely yours to create around you and around what you want, that anything was possible if you were a good enough person and if you were strong enough and just had that fortitude of will. And also a very individualistic mind frame of if it's not working, then it's because of the people around you.
Did they ever have that mindset, like if it's not working, it's your fault?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wasn't something that was openly said, but my biological mom, so the one who was the Mary Kay Avon lady, she has a very hard time accepting responsibility for things. It put her into a position where she didn't have to. She was really easily able to say, well, this isn't working, so it's because of the negativity around me. It's because people don't like me or they don't believe in me. And I happen to be one of those major people. Actually, according to her, my entire creation, my existence is based on the law of attraction because she was supposed to have a son before me, who she lost. And shortly after she was pregnant with me, and according to her, I was so determined to exist that I willed the other child dead. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so
oh, wow.
that was the that was my first real lesson in the law of attraction, is that you can will yourself into existence at the expense of an older sibling.
Wow. And I don't know if the law of attraction actually states that. They say a lot of BS, but
Yeah.
that almost sounds like mental illness, and I don't know.
Yeah. She has a personality disorder, undiagnosed, but having worked in the fields or, and studied it for long enough, it's something that's really obvious if you know what to look for.
Oh yes, I think you said you're in the mental health field.
Yeah, I've taken some time off. Frankly, I was working with individuals, healthcare providers who were on the front lines of COVID, providing behavioral and emotional support, and it really took a toll on me. So,
well, thank you for your essential work. I mean, really, thank you.
Thank you.
That's so interesting, and it's really interesting that your biological mom thought that way, because even though that might be an extreme version of the law of attraction and not what it states, I would constantly see during my years in MLM, the law of attraction basically manipulated into whatever people wanted to believe.
Yeah, because it's not a real law. There's no science behind it. There's nothing to back it. So it's this idea that if you can will the universe to be whatever you want, then the law of attraction can be willed to be whatever you want. There's no limitations. As a kid, that was terrifying. There was nothing for me to, there was no true measurement to hold myself to. It was either things happened because I was a good person, or they didn't happen because the universe hated me.
Right. Yeah, I think back now and I'm embarrassed that as an adult, I believed in that mindset. Even though there were times it didn't make sense and I'd be like, well, I don't know about that. But I mean, it's a very toxic mindset. And I did not realize how toxic it was until much later down the road. What do you, and let me say for people who still believe in that mindset or whatever, basically when you believe in the law of attraction, you have to deny the realities of poverty, of systemic racism, of hardships that people experience in real world problems, because those people didn't attract those things to themselves. They just didn't. And that's a belief that people who have adopted the law of attraction, that's what they preach pretty much. And it's just not true. And it's a really hurtful mindset, especially when it boils down to those certain marginalized groups. So was your father involved in an MLM?
He wasn't as a very good person. He is a very kind and compassionate individual who went through a lot of abuse in his life. And yeah, he is. I wanted to preface it with that because he was the one who had a lot of the toxic positivity. He had me really into The Secret growing up. It was one of the things that we used to watch a lot. And I don't think he realized exactly what it was doing, so I don't want to put that on him. But yeah, he's really into MLMs. He's lost a lot, and it's caused a lot of damage in his life. He's a very intelligent person. He's currently working in infection control. So it's not like he's not an intelligent individual. He's in sales, and he's in legitimate sales that are making a good change for this world. And he's a major expert on infectious diseases. And he was into toxic positivity and so much anti-science stuff that even now it's still surprising,
Wow. I think that's good that you mentioned, he's a good person and he probably didn't understand just how much it was affecting you guys growing up.
I think he's just now starting to understand it a bit, mostly because I'm not letting him still say those things towards me. If there was a lot of chaos, I mean, we had 14 people in my house at any given time, so we were a very vulnerable family. We have a lot of, like I mentioned, my main degree is in behavior analysis. So looking back, I'm able to see not exactly how it happened, but a lot of those steps that led up to how it happened and what made us vulnerable. And a lot of that was our family stories, our lineage, the stories of coming over to America from, the pogroms and the Holocaust and all that, and what we had to survive, that those tales of overcoming and how people made things for themselves.
So I think it's great that you know, your major is in behavioral analysis and you're able to connect those steps. Now looking back, I remember seeing during my time in the MLM industry, because I got to know a lot of people who they had families. They had kids, and you know, their husband was in it or their husband wasn't in it, and they were constantly trying to get their spouse to, you know, to just like get on board. There was always some kind of struggle there. And I know that there were always conferences, there were always things to spend money on, and that caused a lot of tension in families, especially if they're not in the 1%. So how did you view that as a child with your parents? Were they ever going on conferences? Were they wasting a lot of money with these MLMs? What did you see?
There was never a moment where we stopped. I don't ever remember seeing my dad relax. He still doesn't. My biological mom, she used it as an excuse to get her out of the picture. It was a really easy way for her to kind of abandon us and say that we were just holding her back, or, you know, twisted around to her. I genuinely believed it was my fault. Because I controlled the universe, obviously. You know, that's literally what it tells a kid.
And you believed what was your fault? That she was being held back because of you?
Her abandoning us.
Oh.
So her leaving, all of that. There was no time to relax. If you were relaxing, then you were wasting money. You know, my dad, like I said, he works in sales, in a legitimate sales position, but on top of that, there was always a side hustle. You know, if you had a skill, you needed to monetize it. If you had friends, you needed to monetize them. If you had a moment to relax, then you had time to make money. There was no reason to not be doing something. If you didn't like where you were, if you didn't like how you felt, if you didn't like the way the world was, don't complain, change it. You had no right to feel the way that you did.
Wow. And so that mindset of like, you know, anytime you're taking off, you're taking away from your business or you're taking away from making money, that was put on you guys as children?
You're taking away from your life. Yeah. And it wasn't just put on us as like, you know, we had to do this. It was, if you have time to hang out with your friends, then you have time to get A's.
If you have time to go with your friends, you have time to what?
To get A's.
Oh.
Yeah, there was, and it was such this world of self-responsibility where, you know, you didn't get to ask people to bring you your homework if you forgot it at home, which I have ADHD. You know, I forgot a lot of things. But there wasn't room for that either. It was just, you weren't doing it right. You weren't working hard enough. Everything came down to whether or not you were working. And my dad was there for like a lot, you know, he was able to take time off and be there for plays and stuff, but we would have time where it wasn't any school function and we would try to spend time together, and he would have isogenics in his hand or some closet full of product for something that I was helping like put wrappers on these like, you know, tea jars. And it was always very immersed in that culture, you know, of the hustle.
So it sounds like his workaholic mentality transferred down to his children. And you guys really didn't get to play and have a normal childhood, how children should, because it was always work, better your life now, you know, no relaxation. And then when you guys spent time together, it was basically doing stuff with him, but that helped his business.
Yeah, and in some ways, yeah, it was very centered around work. There wasn't any time to spend with them outside of that.
Wow.
And I don't really remember having a lot of quality time with my family. It was just, it felt always like a system and a business, and if you didn't fit in, then you didn't really have a place there.
So what was was your biological mom and your father married during this time, or?
They were married up until I was in 3rd grade, and then they got divorced. Like I said, it was really chaotic. They wound up splitting. She kind of abandoned us, and she kidnapped me for a while, actually, which that was, as she put it, you can't trust the universe to make things happen all the time. Sometimes you have to make it do what you want. So, yeah, that was something that I wish more people understood about what it's like to be raised in that mind frame. It's not just about working. You know, I genuinely don't know what it's like to relax, or what it's like to enjoy a hobby without wanting to make something of it. I don't know how. But more than that, I don't know how to not make things my fault. I have people whose deaths I blame myself for, even though there's no way that I could have contributed to it. But I can't shake that from myself. My biological mom, I had to go no contact recently because she's really heavily involved in conspiracy theories. And part of those conspiracy theories, because I'm the one who killed her child by being born. And so much of what she disagrees with center around the idea that I've shaped the universe into a dangerous place for her. So now she believes that because I'm Jewish, she's bought into that whole adrenochrome thing being run by rabbis, and I'm part of it apparently.
I feel for you. I feel for you.
Yeah.
I had to cut off family last year as well because of the conspiracy theories and the support of white supremacy and just the dangerous ideologies they were adopting. And yeah.
And what's hard is that it's this idea that they're not supposed to really be anything to worry about, because if you're doing right, they can't hurt you. And like you were saying, there was so much about sales going on, but it was so much about the mind frame of what it is. We grew up on The Secret. I grew up on Law of Attraction, on PSI seminars. It was, everything had a metaphor, everything had a guru, everything had a purpose or a target or a goal. There was no emotion that just was. And I'm transgender. And I was, I was born female. I was at the time thinking I was a lesbian, but I was very uncomfortable with that. I didn't think that it was something that was a good thing to be, not because of my family. My grandma was really cool. She actually used to march in the original Pride parades back in San Francisco. I loved her. Yeah, she was the coolest woman. But I spent so much of my life trying to will myself to be straight. And I wound up with a lot of abusive relationships. I even wound up in not one of those MLM cults, but like a small violent cult that I thought I deserved because I was with women. And I thought I just wasn't a good person at being a girl because I just wasn't a good enough human being. If I just was better, I would. It was why all those bad things was happening to me, because I wasn't straight. I wasn't a woman enough. I wasn't this or that. I wasn't able to fit into the roles that other people had. It was such a confusing time filled with so much self-blame. And I couldn't believe anything that, Simon said, because they're just going to change their mind anyway soon enough, like.
Right. That's very interesting that you were raised in an MLM household that believed in like the law of attraction, and then you joined a Christian cult, because I remember reading that in the email.
It actually wasn't Christian.
Oh, it wasn't Christian.
Yeah, it was pagan. It was actually started up by individuals who were queer, who were raised in fundamentalism, and this was like in a time when witchcraft and everything was really big when I was in high school, and it was around that time. And you got to understand, this was when Westboro Baptist Church came and protested at the school that my girlfriend went to back then, So we were banned from prom for being queer. We weren't allowed to go to prom.
Oh,
so we really didn't, we avoided Christianity,
Smart. Yeah, no, I don't blame you there. Interesting. I think that, so here's the similarities I'm just noticing and comparing in my brain as I hear you talk. So you were brought up with this belief that, of the law of attraction and that MLM mindset, and then you joined a cult. And the similarity between all cults, whether they're commercial or not, is that they don't allow for critical thinking whatsoever.
Yeah, they don't.
And the church, which people always get mad when I say this, but I was raised in a fundamentalist Christian household, and Christians, the the way I was raised, the fundamentalists, they don't allow for critical thinking. You're supposed to not question things. Everything is supposed to be taken through faith. So that's why you don't question. You're just supposed to have that belief of faith. So you're just supposed to have that belief of faith. And that's what I was raised in my whole life. So it was so easy for me to transition into the MLM world because I was like, oh, I'm going to have faith. And oh, the law of attraction, that kind of sounds like what I grew up with. And I just need to have faith and just be a good person and things will work out. Yeah. Like it was so easy to believe that because of how I was raised. And then you joined the cult, which they don't question. So it's just very interesting, those similarities.
It was really easy to join the cult because thought control, it was already this idea of you have to control every single one of your thoughts, because if you don't, you're a bad person. If you have bad thoughts, bad things happen. And when you're depressed, you have bad thoughts. So I joined a group where I thought somebody would be there to guide my thoughts. And ironically enough, my bio mom is evangelical fundamentalist and my dad is Jewish. So, it's the sort of Jewish where my rabbi used to say question everything and the fundamentalist side of my family said question nothing. So it was this real weird, I think that's why I kind of wound up in a non-Christian cult,
That's so interesting. I can see how you being a child and having all those beliefs forced on you with the law of attraction where if you don't succeed, it's your fault. If you can't change yourself into this way, it's your fault. If you can't make yourself like this one gender, it's your fault. All this nonsense that someone who's a child whose prefrontal cortex isn't developed will internalize. And that's going to affect you down the road. Obviously this was before social media. And so what was the image that your parents projected to the community, to their friends? Did they make it look like you guys were a really loving family? Because I noticed a lot of MLMers do that. And it's like, I saw their children being neglected for their business. Did you experience that?
Yeah, frankly, I think something that really gives me a lot of pause. I get really angry looking back and thinking, why didn't anybody call CPS on a lot of things? Why did they just let it happen? But I realize now it's because we did project that image. My bio mom is really obsessed with whether or not she looks good, with whether or not she looks young, with how the family looks. If you don't fit into her image of her family and of her identity, you don't belong. And it's not like you got to say who you were. You were told who you were and what role you played. And I never was able to identify who I was. It was the same with my dad. And, my stepmom, I love her very dearly. She's like my mom now. But there was always this idea of what it should be and how we're supposed to act, and no idea of how to fix it when we didn't act that way. And so we just kind of stopped showing up to places together. I didn't really see any of my dad's coworkers after I stopped being a kid. I no longer got to go down to his workplace or was invited out to the barbecues or, picnics or whatever, the functions for work. We just stopped going because I guess we just didn't fit that mold anymore,
Wow. So it's like, if you don't appear one way, you don't get to be with the family, basically.
Yeah. And at the time when this happened, when we stopped going, it was just myself, my dad, my stepmom, and my grandma. So it wasn't like we were still going out to these major functions or anything. It never really seemed to come up, but it did stop. It all stopped suddenly. There was no more family trips or anything. So
that would be so detrimental. Whether you're a child or a teenager, that would be so hard. So it's interesting to me, and I wonder what your thoughts are on it. Being a child who was raised in that MLM mindset world, and then me having been in the MLM industry, and a lot of the audience who's watching this right now, I worry so much about the children of influencers, about the children of people in an MLM who are trying to project this image to their followers to sell and to recruit. Because I know that the image you have to project when you are an influencer or when you are in an MLM is almost perfection. and it's completely manufactured. And I worry so much about these children when they grow up, how they're going to look at their parents, the struggles they're going to go through. Like, was a camera always in their face because their parents always wanted the perfect picture for their timeline? Were they always made to hold these products to be a good little helper for mommy? What do you think about the world we're in right now and what you experienced?
I think it's incredibly dangerous. They're performative. It's a performative childhood. They're being taught, at least based off of what I know for myself, they're being taught that their value is in how they present to others and in how others perceive them, and not in what their self-identity is and who they are. And I know for myself, I'm just going to be blunt, this is one of the longest conversations that I've had with a stranger since probably last November. When all of this kind of hit, I hit a level of depression that I've never had before. And I've always struggled with depression, but I didn't just lose what I thought I knew of myself. I lost my language. They're being given a language that's not based in common English. They're being taught concepts that aren't real. They're being given a fictional foundation. And when that foundation falls apart, you don't have words to describe the way you feel because you're not taught how to handle your anger. You're not taught how to handle your emotions or your depression, or to be vulnerable in a way that's meaningful, that doesn't rely on having others respond to you a certain way, because that's not vulnerability, that's manipulation. I only learned how to manipulate. I didn't learn how to communicate or be vulnerable. I never really learned how to connect in a genuine capacity. And it's such a lonely thing, and it's such a judgmental thing, because when it's performative, that means that all eyes are on you, and you don't have that chance to take a step back. And even if people aren't looking, you still feel like they are. So you carry that judgment of what you think they're saying. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm so worried about these kids because they need a chance to mess up and not be perfect. They need a chance to learn that it's okay. And for the love of God, somebody needs to teach them to say the words, "It's not my fault," and that those words are not a bad thing to say.
Absolutely. It's a very scary world we're living in. I love that you use the words performative childhood, because that's exactly what it is. And I haven't heard that phrase before, and it's so true. It's a performative childhood. I love how you said, like, you had to learn, you lost your frame of reference, you lost your language because of how life was. Can you dive in a little bit more for me on that?
I used to describe everything through metaphors. I grew up very heavily entrenched in the story ideal, and everything was a story. Everything had a comparison. Everything could be simplified down to some, what's the term? Like to some fable, and that's not the case. You can't simplify down most of life's issues, and when you do, they're going to be wrong. I have a hard time distinguishing between how to say something simply and how to say something accurately. So if you're trying to break down a complex topic, it feels like it becomes so much less accurate when you simplify it. I also don't know how to, I feel like everything I say is designed for manipulation. I always feel like I've stepped outside of the real world. Like I've stepped outside of society, and like I'm delusional because I don't understand what they're saying anymore. It's so much of it just feels like alphabet soup is just kind of vomiting out of people's mouths sometimes when they're like, okay, well, you have to adjust your vision of your perception of reality to manifest your dreams. And it's like, okay, all of those words mean things individually, but not in the order you put them in. And so much of that still pervades the corporate world, even the mental health world. And it's such an insult to the people we're trying to treat. I was given words that mean nothing to describe emotions that don't exist. I don't know how to say when I'm angry or frustrated. I hardly know how to describe pain. And I know how weird that sounds. There was never pain. There was action to be taken.
Right. It makes sense. And if you weren't even allowed to feel the full range of emotions that human beings experience. If you had to repress those, that makes perfect sense that you wouldn't have a language for those words. Oh my gosh, if I never heard the word manifest again, I would be so happy. Like, I hate that word. It's just, that like word triggers me. I get so mad because I'm like, oh, I'm like thrown back into MLM world and that toxic positivity and all that jargon and that loaded language that cults use. It's sick and it's pervasive and it's constantly perpetuated in those worlds. And it's interesting that you said you didn't grow up feeling, you grew up learning how to manipulate, I think you said. Because I felt that way towards the end of my time in MLM when I was becoming disillusioned with everything, because you think that you're learning a lot of sales tactics. And you think that you're learning these sales tactics to help people and to bring them to your team and to help people with this new amazing product that's going to change their life. And no, you're just learning manipulation tactics, emotional manipulation, psychological manipulation. And I realized towards the end of it, I just was like, this is like, I just feel icky. What they're telling me that everyone can be successful if they just train their mind to believe it is a lie, because I built a big team and the majority, just like in the majority of MLMs, were not successful. And so you feel like you're recruiting to fail, but then you're just told, oh, well, if you're not seeing success with your team, it's your fault. Because you're just attracting something negative to you. And it creates this mindset where you start to feel crazy. And you start to feel it's completely your fault, you're crazy, and then you're just taught manipulation tactics, and it is such a hard thing to come out of. I'm in therapy now, and I will probably be for a very long time, but yeah, you have to like unpack it over time. And I found, even after I left the MLM world and I got a job outside the house, which the MLM world tells you like you're a loser if you get a job, because it just means just over broke. I remember being like, I don't want to go into a sales job. Everyone told me, oh, you were successful in MLM, you should go find a sales job, you'd make a killing. And I was like, I don't ever want to be in sales again. Like, it is manipulation, and not all of it, all of it, but a lot of it is. And I just like, I never want to do it again, ever. So
especially if you have that identity of that story of yourself of being a manipulator.
Yeah. And you know, what's funny is like, even at the time I was like, it's just like, I just didn't ever want to use those tactics ever again, ever. And it's spread throughout our entire culture here in the US. A lot of manipulation tactics within sales. I feel like in the MLM world, it's taken to a whole nother level. But yeah, it's hard. What are you working on now to still like overcome that lifestyle and that experience that you witnessed as a child and that performative childhood? I love that term.
Honestly, therapy. Like I said, I've been out of work since November, and part of that is I realized I don't want to be in mental health. Like, I don't want to be a therapist. I wanted to go into coaching, but life coaching is so rife with corruption and with the MLM industry that it's like, I don't even know how to go into that without being just another scammer. But I mean, I don't want to be a therapist because I don't need that degree to do what I want, because I don't want to work with the emotions. I want to work with actionable goals and helping people learn how to interact better with their families, not on the emotional side, because I do a lot better with that. Frankly, I've been doing a lot of therapy. I've been really doing a lot of self-exploration. My wife and I we're in the process of trying to actually, I just got an email. Our license was approved for adoption. We're hoping to bring home 2 kids soon.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's foster to adopt, and it's always been what I wanted to do. But I'm working on. I've always done better at looking at myself through the lens of other people, because there was never any lens for ourselves. I never learned how to do that. So I keep trying to think to myself who I want to be for the kids I'm bringing home and what pain I can save them from. And every time I start to find myself falling into those old traps, I think about how I want it to impact them. And it really changes the way that I look at things and how I approach it. I'm still really taken aback a lot by stuff that pops up, and I'll talk to my wife, and it's not normal. You know, it's not a normal thing to experience or feeling to have. I was surprised when she told me that she gets angry. I didn't know that people got angry who were healthy. I still can't, because I'm out of work right now. I still can't ask her to make dinner because I feel like I'm being a bad person for that. I'm having to learn how to interact with the world in a normal way, you know, and it's hard at 34.
Yeah, that is hard. What was the age you, like, was there a catalyst for when you kind of woke up out of things? I know that there can be a lot of little straws that break the camel's back, but was there a certain catalyst or an event you remember?
There's a lot. There's like a few things that stand out. I remember the first time that I really kind of suspected that stuff wasn't the way it was laid out was as a kid, being in church, ironically, with my mom's church, or my bio mom's church, which was at the time one of those, Bible Belt Baptists, standing up, dancing, collapsing, like, and I remember looking at
that. Playing in the spirit is what we called it.
Oh my God. I remember watching them thinking, okay, that's cool. But it was when they got to the story of Noah's Ark when I was like, okay, wait a minute, there's something messed up here. That the math, I'm bad at math, and even I know that doesn't work. Like, and ironically, that was the first thing. And every time I started to buy into stuff too much, I always kind of would flash back to that minute of like, wait a minute, they still haven't explained Noah's Ark. So like, I feel like that was the seed that kind of like planted the descent. But honestly, it was QAnon. It was seeing what QAnon was doing. It was watching the people who bought into all of this MLM BS, who didn't believe in science, who were being manipulated to stop vaccinating their kids because they didn't trust science. It was my bio mom telling me that obviously my graduate degree didn't do me that good of a job because I still believed in science. Yeah. Like, it was watching the people who I used to think were good become human. And realizing they were human made me realize that they were capable of the same amount of mistakes that I was, and they were just like me. And if I could make those mistakes, then so could they. And yeah, it was, I still remember my bio mom telling me that it was tricking someone, that I was lucky that I met my wife before I transitioned because I didn't have to trick her into loving me. And that was sort of the moment where I kind of sat back, and it kind of hit me that like, there's something really wrong here. She also called my wife's her mom was a Swiss immigrant, and she would call my wife an anchor baby regularly. Yeah.
What'd she mean by that?
An anchor baby. Her mom was an immigrant from Switzerland, and she came over here because she was a GM. She was a GM of hotels and stuff. So my bio mom called my wife an anchor baby because she was born of an immigrant. And she would say it jokingly, and then she'd say, "Oh, but it's not you that we're worried about." It's like, "Oh, because she's light skinned," like, and that was my mom's younger brother, by the way, is Hispanic, so like actually like born in Mexico.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No, we got to go back on that. My mom's younger brother is the child of a Mexican immigrant. So for her to say that to my wife, and then to say that she doesn't mean her, it was like, okay, so you mean your brother then?
I've never heard that term before. I'll have to ask my husband.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my husband's family, they're immigrants from Argentina. So I'll have to
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'll have to ask if he's heard of that, because I've never heard of that.
Anchor baby is apparently what people call kids of immigrants, and it's supposed to be dropping anchor in the US because they can't deport you if you have a baby here, which is entirely not true. It's a completely fictional concept. Anchor babies aren't real. It's a super racist white supremacist thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Which, when she started using those phrases, I was like, all right, you do understand your child is Jewish, transgender, married to an immigrant.
Right. Oh, I had white family members try and say stuff to me. I'm like, do you know who you're talking to?
Yeah.
Do you know? It's, and in a way, I almost feel like it was projection because of who they were talking to. It's like they just had to spit out that hate and anger in our faces because just the sight of us made them mad.
But it's not you, though, according to them. You're the exception. They don't mean you.
Right. You're always the exception, but everybody else is evil.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny because it was only recently when watching a lot of the anti-MLM stuff it started out with watching a lot of atheist stuff. And I know that might not be popular to say because so much of this is steeped in religion.
You can say that on this channel.
I'm glad.
Totally fine.
Accepting that my mom had a personality disorder kind of encouraged me to step back and look at the religions I was raised in and the way that the perception I had of God, which then led me to my perception of God being shaped by that MLM culture, the law of attraction, the PSI seminars, that how to make friends and influence people. It was this idea of God wasn't a thing. It was your upline. God was your upline. And if you didn't please your upline was going to call and yell at you and make your life horrible. And you had to put in good boy tokens to get good boy points, I guess. And I had to finally look at all of that, and I had to look at how it impacted me. It was then I started kind of saying things out loud that I was never allowed to say, like, I'm angry, or I don't actually dislike this person or this group. I don't understand it, or I have feelings related to something that happened that's not related to that, but it somehow turned into that. I was finally, after getting some of that out and realizing some of these things that I felt so strong about were just really simple issues that once I talked, they were gone. I was able to step back and kind of see, I'm not some unhealthy or horrible person. I was born very healthy. I had these illnesses assigned to me and carved into me by people who, or by a system that basically tried to force me to fit in when I wasn't made to fit in. I wasn't the target audience for these scams or for that faith or for the law of attraction or any of it. I was one of the people designed to feed it. I was the person meant to be fuel to the fire. I was the sacrifice. And because I looked the same way as the people who it was for, because I was parallel to it, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that I was meant to be the victim of it, not the target audience.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Flashing back to your adult life and 2020, the best year of our lives. Woo, so much fun. So up until 2020, before that, were you still using words like manifest? Were you still believing in that type of toxic positivity and all of that? So it really wasn't until 2020 happened that you were like, oh, wait a minute, none of this makes sense.
Yeah, there was a lot of it that I was still kind of coming out of where I still used the language, but I didn't really buy into it as much. It still made sense to me. I still spoke that language. 2020 ripped away everything about my identity, I think. I still believed in things like you can change your life by changing the way you think. And that's not true. You can maybe change how you move through your life, but you're not going to will yourself out of poverty in a system that's designed to keep you there. And I didn't believe in such a thing as being a victim. I didn't believe in such a thing as saying it's not my fault or saying it's not my job. I believed that you were supposed to manifest things, that the universe was yours to control. And I was of the mind frame that, you're supposed to have at least 2 streams of income. I never knew that you could have a job that didn't contribute back to society as a major thing. I always thought that you had to have a job that was emotionally taxing and dedicated towards helping other people. And that you couldn't do things that made you happy. You had to do things that made other people happy, because otherwise you're being selfish and wasting your life. And I thought that was just called being a good person. Like, so yeah, I thought that was how things were supposed to be, and I was using all that language. I was adhering to those thoughts, even if I wasn't part of the MLM group. And I got to admit, even I was part of a couple of MLMs. Like, it was easy to fall into them because I thought they were good products. My my bio mom was obsessed with Kirby. My dad got me onto isogenics, and which actually led to probably the most damaging health decisions I ever made. I mean, I had a heart attack later on from an eating disorder after starting that crap. Yeah. I mean, it feeds off of mental illness so bad, especially depression in kids. It's the most damaging stuff, the MLM culture. And I wound up on Thrive for a while, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. I was part of that Thrive stuff, and I didn't even realize how bad it was until after I'd already stopped it, because it was so blessed expensive. But I mean, I was taking that stuff like candy,
Oh, wow.
And that was after I was diagnosed with a heart issue.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense that you were using MLM products because you were raised on them, I was my first MLM was a health and wellness MLM. And I remember that we sold shakes and workout DVDs. And I just remember leaving that one. I'm not going to say what it is, but let's just say they have celebrity trainers and yeah.
I did that one too.
Yeah. And I remember walking away. That was the one I had the most success with. And I was in for 3.5 years. I lost 50 pounds in 5 sizes, and I did it in a healthy way. But I remember leaving there, and I had developed what they call orthorexia, which is where you just focus so much on food and the next meal and what you're going to eat and how it's going to affect you. And I mean, it was over the top. And even having lost all that weight and looking great on the outside, my doctors were like, your blood pressure is sky high. We need to put you on medicine now. And that didn't make sense to me because I was like, but I'm happy and I follow the law of attraction and I'm all about positivity. How can my blood pressure be high? I mean, it just must be the day. No, it wasn't. And it was such a toxic mindset. But I just remember once I was finally out of that MLM and I had been out for a few years, I remember looking back at just how unhealthy of a mindset I had, because it was nothing but diet culture. And listen, when people want to go on a diet to lose weight, and that's between them and their doctor and it's for their health, I am all for it. But it's completely different in the diet culture, especially in diet culture with MLM. I mean, it was so toxic. And so you grew up with that as a child. Did you find that affected your mentality around diet culture?
Oh yeah. I was always up and down on my weight, but I wasn't, super overweight. I was a lot smaller than I am now, and I'm not, wildly, massive now. But anything that I could have that would stop me from eating, I would take it. I abused my psychiatric medication. The few times I was allowed to have it, because that was something I was always pulled off of my medication within a few months of starting it. So I was never consistently medicated for depression, for any trauma, for ADHD. I never got stable help for that.
Pulled off by your doctor or your family?
My family. I was never allowed to get any accommodations or, even inform the school. It was too dangerous for my future. That was something that would just hold you back. And medications you just needed to learn how to do better, But I mean, that whole fear of being told that the pharmaceutical industry is out to kill your kids. My dad really thought he was doing the best. But I got into the cult when I was in high school. I was really vulnerable and I had no supervision. So around my junior year, I got into drugs really hard. And I got into drugs so I started on isogenics and I started losing weight. I was still eating a lot. I was getting really tired, and I was in college, I was in high school, and I was working a full-time job. That was my junior year. Junior into senior year, I got really into drugs. My senior year, I was on amphetamines, which I didn't understand the reason why it was helping me was because I have severe ADHD. And amphetamines are what helps you focus. I used that to not eat. I lost about 100 pounds in a year. And then I got pulled off of that. And then when I was about 22, I was working a security job overnight. And I remember looking at, no, I think I was like 21 or something. I remember looking at a Pro-Ana website as I was sitting there drinking my isogenic shake again and thinking to myself, I bet that I could just stop eating. I just have to be strong enough and just will the universe to no longer be hungry. And I didn't think anything bad could happen to me, because if you were doing the right thing, bad things don't happen, and it won't happen to you. I mean, that's only what bad people face, you know? And yeah, I just, it was like this switch flipped of, I just had to will the universe enough. My cheat days, I was following the directions for the diet programs that I was on, and it was still keeping me under that range of 800 calories a day. I was also a personal trainer at the time. I got NASM certified, and I wound up getting some training from certain groups that tend to enjoy sponsoring celebrity trainers. And my boss at the gym that I worked at, I won't say the name of it, but it is a legitimate gym, but he was also part of that group, decided that because I was, again, I was working 2 jobs at the time, and in college I was an adult, I was too tired. So he got me onto these special diet pills, and all of it combined, it was just kind of one of those things of like, here, you know, well, you're on this, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. And it was always more product and more money spent. And I spent more money working at that gym than I made. And it was about 4 months into working there that I was also a food server at the time. I collapsed while carrying a tray, wound up in the hospital with a heart attack. I was on the equivalent of 34 cups of coffee a day. I wrecked my heart. And that was starting at the age of like 13, is when I started, you know, going to stores and buying these things, or even like buying them off of my bio mom from, you know, her catalogs, you know, it was this back and forth thing. And I've completely wrecked my body now. You know, I have messed up hands. I have no cartilage in my knees. I have issues with sleep. My stomach's messed up. My heart's messed up. Like I destroyed my body using those products, because those were the tools I was given.
Right. It's very interesting that, you know, you were started on like isogenic so young, and you didn't think anything of it, but it was completely, with your parents being involved, it was completely reshaping your view of health into a negative one. And I remember being in that first health and wellness MLM I was in, and they would always say like, oh, your kids can drink this shake. It's totally fine. And it might have been, but you don't think about like, well, what else is your child paying attention to that you're doing? All those before and after pictures, all the, you know, all this diet culture that kids do pay attention to.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, like, look how it shaped your worldview. Like, of course that would rub off on children. I remember not long before I left that industry, before I left that company, thinking just how toxic things were when I started seeing women give birth, and they would like only 3 days later, they would take a selfie in like a sports bra and little short shorts, or maybe even a bikini. And they were like, I'm so happy these workout programs that I did while I was pregnant helped me snap back into my little waist, and my health and fitness is on point. And I'm just like, you just pushed a baby out. Like,
yeah.
Can't you just chill out?
Yeah, knowing what I know now, actually, that's impossible. it's literally like they're not connected there right now. You know, doesn't work that way.
Right. You have good genes.
Yeah.
and it's like, but still, it's like the fact that it made me so sad that those women felt that pressure to even make a post like that after just giving birth.
What's depressing to me is the fact that they have that little understanding of their own body and that little compassion for their own self. This idea that your body isn't good enough the way that it is, that it can't heal the way that it needs to, that anything that you're not able to do on your own is a sign of a flaw as a character. It's a moral flaw. It's a failing of your integrity, and that's not the case. Mm-hmm. It kills me to see people putting themselves through the pain of killing themselves, literally, legitimately killing themselves, sacrificing their families, sacrificing their children whose childhood, has no foundation, no meaning, no solid grounding. To see them go through all of that and to realize that all it would take is a little bit of education to prevent this. Some critical thinking classes, some early on true education on how the human body works. If I knew what I know now about reproduction and women's anatomy, and somebody came to me back then and I had seen some of those pictures, because some of those pictures were the ones that really pushed me to try those things. But knowing what I know now, I would have been terrified for those people. I still am. And I never would have fallen for those things. It's like it feeds off of our education system not being able to do what it needs to do. And I think that's where a lot of it so heavily plays into the more conservative ideologies, the more religious ideologies when it comes to what's good to teach for anatomy and what's not, because it is literally an industry designed to prey on female misinformation and on the miseducation and misinformation being given to women about their own bodies, their own anatomy, their own ability, their own purpose in the world. Transitioning into male, I was able to step outside of that prescribed role and to see that, you want to talk about performative childhood, it's performative gender in society. Like, women are, especially in those more conservative, they're cataloged into these things that they have to be, and they're taught to hate themselves if they don't match that, if they don't meet it. And it's devastating. It's kneecapping our entire society, because some of the people, I have never met more brilliant, dedicated, hardworking, driven, compassionate people than the victims of MLM scams. Because these are people who truly believe in helping others. And if we were able to, if we had taken all of that intelligence, all of that drive, all of that passion, trained it and let it loose on real world problems, imagine how much better our society would be if the Hunbots were social workers or real innovators, if they were real inventors, if they were allowed to be educators or be more than just a profit margin. And it makes me so, that's looking back at what I went through. It's like, okay, that's bad and I can handle that. But seeing it still done, seeing it still happen, that's what makes me angry. That's what fires me up. It's seeing, like, how can people not see this? How can a parent look at a child they love, especially a young girl, and not be infuriated or see through it? I kind of went off there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's hard. It's absolutely, and I completely agree with you, that mindset of like, what could these amazing people who work so hard and want to help people succeed, what could they do if it was actually channeled for good? Yeah. And not for capitalistic gain. I married a social worker, and I married him, it was maybe 6 months before I officially completely terminated my contract with my last MLM company and totally walked away. I had already, the year before, I had already been becoming, like, deconverting from the whole illusion of it all. And I just remember like, looking at his job and seeing how he helped the community and things, and thinking like, there are so many more important things than just trying to monetize every little thing in your life, and so many more important things that can help people other than the hustle mentality, which is so damaging. Now that you're going to be adopting children, which is so exciting, are there any things that right away, because obviously it'll change over time and whatever, but right now, are there any few things set in stone that you and your wife know you are not going to have them do or to teach them to stay away from or anything like that, other than MLMs, of course?
Honestly, I'm not so interested in what I want them to stay away from so much as what I want to give them. I want them to learn how to challenge thought. What actually drove me to leaving the field of therapy is I'm a firm believer in that you need to argue with your therapist. If you don't agree with them, argue with them. Challenge them. Don't let them assign you a diagnosis if you're not comfortable with it. They need to justify it. And that's what I want to give to my kids. I want them to be comfortable questioning me, to be comfortable arguing with me and fighting back, because I should be the one that they practice that with. I want them to learn and to know how to source references, how to critically think, how to deconstruct an argument. And more than that, I want them to know that they're worth deconstructing those arguments for, that they don't have to buy into a scam to be worth being loved or to be somebody worth fitting in. And I think the one thing that I want to teach them are the words, "It's not my fault," because I didn't learn to say those words. That wasn't part of my language until a few months ago. And that was probably the most horrifying words that I ever said out loud, because it changed the way that I saw my entire life. And I still am having a hard time figuring out how to operate in a world where it is possible to be a victim and where sometimes you just can't help it. And I want to give them the space to process that before they have to go out in the world and do it alone.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think just the word victim itself is powerful, although it's horrible that somebody has to be a victim of something. I think it's powerful because there's a lot of people who want to say just like, oh no, you're a survivor, yada yada. But it's like, we need to recognize that people are victims and that they have been wronged, so that they can begin to heal, and that other people know, like, hey, people are taking advantage of people, because it happens all the time. And I know in the MLM world, when it comes to recruitment, there's a phrase that somebody turns 18 every day, meaning don't give up on your business because somebody's going to be turning 18 and you'll be able to recruit them. And that is so scary. When you're in it, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to help a youngin with this opportunity.
I'm from Vegas, and I knew a few people who ran strip clubs, and that's the exact same thing that they used to say. Yeah.
Wow.
Someone turns 18 every day. So
wow. Yeah, and they say that all the time in the MLM industry, and it's just like so scary about what I just want to like warn all these high schoolers before they go out into the world, like, don't like stay away from these companies. It's gonna totally screw up your life, or at least like your next few years for a while. You've been so amazing, and you have shared so much insight, and I love that you've shared everything you have, and even talking about your transgender journey, which I know is not easy, and especially in this last year with seeing how radicalized people got, and your own bio mom using that against you. It's so wrong, and I think you're so brave to share what you have. In closing, what would you want people to know, especially parents who might be in an MLM right now watching this and wondering if it's affecting their kids, how it's affecting their kids? What would you say?
You're killing your kids. I'm not going to mince the words. Nobody told my parents, and they should have known. And if you're a parent who's in an MLM, if you believe in the law of attraction, you're pushing that onto your kids, you're killing them. And there's no way to look at it any other way. If there is anything about them that doesn't fit into that mold, that doesn't match that criteria, that's going to be internalized. You're doing nothing but just perpetuating another generation of abuse, misinformation, and pain. And one day they will look back at it, they will see through it, and they will resent you so much for it, so much more than you realize. And if you're lucky, you'll have loved them enough for them to forgive you for it, but they still won't respect you.
That's a very good point. I love that you did not mince words, because sometimes people just need to hear it, and they need to hear the truth.
Yeah, no, I'm tired of being polite. That's all that my life has been, was being polite and considering other people's emotions. Even the idea that I'm transgender was, well, I need to be careful because it's going to make things uncomfortable for other people. And I just need to deal with being fired from jobs for it, because that did happen last year. Issues came up because of it, and it was just, it's about being an inconvenience to others and learning. And I didn't know how to speak up for myself. So I'm tired of being polite about it. I'm tired of protecting other people's emotions when they clearly have no capacity in this moment to care for others. And I truly believe that people want to care about others, especially their kids. So they deserve to know. They deserve to know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said you're tired of being polite about it, because that was the whole reason I named my channel Not the Good Girl, because I was like, I'm not going to stay silent. Y'all can label me whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just coming out. Like, I'm going to say whatever, and it is what it is.
Yeah, that's why my wife actually saw your channel, because I was so mad. I'm like, I'm so tired of being considered, just always having to be polite to these assholes. And she's like, oh, you need to watch this channel.
That's so funny. And it's like the older I get and the more I do these interviews with these amazing people like yourself and hear these stories, I'm like, you know what? It's not that we're not even being polite. We're still being polite, and we're saying what we mean and meaning what we say in a polite way. But
yes.
What the manipulation they like to use is that if it goes against their thinking and it goes against their desires, then you're being a bad person. You're not being polite, and you need to stay silent.
Yeah, it's the equation of accountability to rudeness. Because if you're holding them accountable, then you're being rude and you're not being forgiving and you're being a negative person.
Yes. And that mindset is so damaging. And it's interesting because I was in an MLM, you were a child of MLM, and yet we still have so many similarities, parallels, the mindset, everything. Obviously, it affected you worse because you were a child. Your prefrontal cortex wasn't fully developed yet.
Yeah. There's definitely some lingering processing issues. I'll tell you what, I'm not neurotypical. I know that much.
I'm so thankful you shared what you did, because I think that mental health is so important. I'm not afraid to say I'm in therapy. You weren't afraid to say it. And I think that's huge, because once you start being able to have a narrative for what happened to you, and you have the language to express yourself and to express what happened to you, you can start to pick up the pieces and rebuild your life.
I think the one thing that I hope people understand, and that I hope really comes out of what happened this last year in society, and as our families change and we come to accept each other for who we are outside of what we've been trained to show. I hope people understand that forgiveness is not a requirement for healing. That people who were raised in this, or people who were victims of the MLM culture where, like you, who they got into it, they were taken advantage of, and let's be honest, all of us have hurt people because of this. We've all done things to victimize others. Forgiveness is not a requirement for us to get better. We do not deserve a right to their forgiveness, just like the people who hurt us don't deserve a right to ours. The only thing we have to do is forgive ourselves for the role we played in hurting ourselves, and for that feeling that we need to be accountable. We need to forgive ourselves for the gifts. Yeah. And that's about it.
Yeah. And I hope anybody who's watching who was in an MLM with children can show themselves grace, and at least you got out and now you're educating yourself, because you know what? Like you prefaced it at the beginning with your dad. You're like, my dad's a good person and he's smart and he's intelligent, but yet this still happened.
The difference between him and my biological mom is, if I go to my dad about these things, he'll listen and he'll say he's sorry, and he won't challenge on it. He's willing to accept responsibility. And people who are willing to change, to get better, to acknowledge those things, to acknowledge fault, that is such a rare thing today, to say, oh yeah, no, I did do that, I'm so sorry. Not like, oh, well, but you need to understand. It's just, oh my God, no, I didn't mean for that to come across that way. I didn't mean for it to be that way. I'm so sorry. Just doing that completely changes a relationship, because that's a sign that you're willing to change. That's a sign that you love the person more than you love yourself. And that's all that a kid needs.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, Isiah. I'm so happy you shared your story. And tell your wife I said hi. And I'm so glad she introduced you to me.
I will. She's teaching right now, but I'm sure she's already told more than a few of her students about this. So.